Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Lady Gardeners podcast. Today's guest is someone who I have been good friends with for years, and actually the first time I ever met her in person was to record an episode of the early seasons of the podcast. And she's just so full of energy, so full of life, enthusiasm, and really cares about people. And in the last podcast episode we recorded in person, Rhiannon was talking about an idea she had to set up a community growing project designed to support food banks, and it was really, really exciting to have her back on the podcast and hear about how she's progressed with the idea and brought Devon Dig and Donate to life. So now the project is fully up and running. They've just received a successful national lottery grant and it's just looking fantastic. So I'm super excited to have Rhiannon from Devon and Earth and of Devon Dig and Donate on the podcast today. Now, I was wearing one of my Feverfew gardening t-shirts when we recorded this episode, and Rhiannon had no idea that Feverfew are the sponsors of this podcast, but she expressed how much she also loves the gloves and loves the brand and loves Rachel. So this was just a perfect fit episode. So for those of you who don't know, the podcast is sponsored by Feverfew Gardening Co, and they make the best gloves ever. These are super comfortable, they clip together so you don't lose one. They're bramble proof and they're just super durable. So I've been using my gloves for about 2 years now and they're still in perfect condition. And now I've got 3 pairs. I've got one for the allotment, one for home and one for work. So I'm a big fan. And if you want to get 15% off your next pair, then you can use code LadyGardener15 to see more. And definitely give her a follow across the social channels because what she does is amazing, and watching her brand grow over the past couple of years has just been such a pleasure. So happy shopping, happy growing, happy listening, and I hope you enjoy the episode.
Okay, go.
Hi Rhiannon, how are you?
Hey, it's so nice to see you again. I'm really good, thank you.
So thrilled to have you, I want to say on the podcast, but back on the podcast, because this is a returning guest and we're here to talk about a project that you floated in the first podcast episode, which we did in the kitchen you're sat in right now.
Exactly.
And I met your lovely cat and we had a little bit of lunch. We just had a wonderful day. So I'm super excited to follow up and share the news on Devon Dig and Donate and everything that you've done with it.
Yeah, it's so funny, isn't it? That like, how many years ago was that?
I think it was like
ago.
2 years ago, 2022 maybe.
And like you say, we were sat in this very kitchen and I was like, oh, one day I'd like to do this. And now it's actually happening. It's a real thing.
And it is going well. Did I see you just got Awards for All funding? Very exciting.
We did, yes. The National Lottery Community Fund, we received one of their Awards for All grants. We're so, so grateful. And it came at a time where like I was in a bit of like panic mode and feeling quite stressed about the finances because we'd had a little bit of money that we'd kind of fundraised prior to that. And I remember it so clearly because it was a slightly embarrassing moment. I was sitting in the conference for my job and I was at the front table because I find it hard to like read the slides. I'm not sat close enough. And it was like the updates on like what's going on in Devon education. Nothing like overly stimulating, and I got a text from one of our other directors saying this is a great email to see, and we'd got it and I just welled up. I was so like relieved and so excited and just like this huge mix of emotions, and this woman sat next to me looked at me with this look on her face like, why are you crying? Updates about education. I was like, oh, I've just got some really happy news. So it was such a like weird, overwhelming like emotion to read that, but I was so, so grateful to the National Lottery for funding us, and it means that we can really crack on. You know, we've been able to buy the shed and we're getting our equipment and we're sorting out the fencing because the rabbits are... Don't even get me started on the rabbits.
We'll talk pests later in the episode because I think that's it's a topical topic every year, but this year especially feels like one of those pest-ridden years.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I feel like slugs are trying to take over the world at the moment.
They are.
I think everyone feels like that who's gardening.
Yeah, and they're getting bigger and slimier, and I just hate slugs. Can't stand
Yeah.
them.
I think slug slinging should be in the Olympics in 2028.
Yes,
I'm really
get
good at
it in. I'm actually not. On our session last week, I had a slug in a pot and I went to sling it into a hedge, and I didn't think anyone was watching me do it, but it was a massive slug, and I have like a genuine phobia of them. Like if they
They're
touch
not
me,
nice, are they?
oh. Anyway, it flew back and it literally like didn't skin my face, didn't touch me, but it fell right in front of me, and I was like, oh. And the childminder was behind me. She was absolutely wetting herself, being like, I'm so glad I saw that. But yeah, not good at it.
I had the other day, I went out to do some slug slinging in the garden, and when I came back in, like took my shoes off, and then I was like, oh, I'm gonna go out and watch the meteor shower, and put my foot into the truck, and there was a massive slug in there, and I was like, oh, it's the worst.
That's where my fear comes from, because we used to get slugs and snails in my mum's house, and they always used to go into your shoes, and like there's only so many times you need to do that before it becomes a genuine fear.
It's just unnecessary behaviour from them, isn't it?
It really is. Also, what do they do? I know that everything has its place in the environment, but what do they do?
Yeah, apart from eat everything.
Yeah, bloody pests. Anyway, let's come back to you and your project. I think let's start off with, can you do like a potted history of your gardening life and how it got you to Devon Dig and Donate, and then you can go into your very exciting project.
Yeah, so I think we sort of touched upon this last time that we spoke, but my history of gardening is actually quite short, because basically for my whole life, my mum has been desperately trying to get me into gardening and to become a keen gardener. And we had she had a veg patch at the end of the garden in the house we grew up in, and she let my brother and I have a little patch, and we got to choose a little ornament, and she would buy us seeds, and I just couldn't care less at that point. And I just I think growing up, I don't know, I just didn't get it. I didn't see the point. And a friend of mine over the last sort of 10-15 years has really tried to get me into gardening, and she's been like, look at all these beautiful flowers and look what you can create. And I was like, oh yeah, great, it's pretty. And then I went for a walk one day when I'd moved to the village I'm in now, and I went for a walk with a friend of mine, and she was like, oh, can we just go to my allotment and just water the plants? I was like, yeah, sure, that'd be cool to look around. And I don't, something just clicks. It was really quite bizarre, because like I said, I'd had no interest at all. And I think part of it was our allotment site has a beautiful view of the countryside, the Devon countryside, the red earth in the fields, there's forests on the hill. And there's something about the site, it's just so peaceful and so tranquil. And I do think a big part of it, of me going, oh, I'm going to get an allotment here, was that, and that feeling around the site. And so I signed up, and I thought, oh, there'll be a long waiting list, because you hear that all the time about allotments. And 2 weeks later, I had my allotment, and it was amazing. But it was armpit high for me, and I'm 6 foot tall, with grass and brambles and weeds. And so I remember standing there going, oh my gosh, what do I do with this? And I just started reading, and I started looking on YouTube and Instagram, and talking to my mum, who was very smug at that point, and talking to some of the other allotment holders, and just went from there, and sort of slowly, bit by bit, turned it into the space that it is now. And during that time, I was working in a school, and part of my responsibility was our school nutrition and kind of improving our school meals, but also doing kind of outreach stuff with parents about how nutrition could be improved in kind of family meals and things like that. And a lot of that led to conversations with families who were really struggling and were having to access food banks, and sometimes schools are the people who signpost families to food banks. And I remember just feeling really kind of, I guess, angry in a way, all these kind of different emotions. Angry that we're in a state in this country and in this world where food banks have to be a provision, and feeling really kind of upset for these families that are having to access it, and had some really like heartbreaking conversations with people. And one of the themes that was coming up was that when families were struggling, fresh fruit and veg was one of the first things they would cut out of their shopping, like their shopping budget, because they felt that fresh fruit and veg was like a bit of a luxury, and also it's quite expensive. And then you're kind of in that cycle of, well, the people aren't getting as many of the nutrients and the kind of balanced diet that they need, and then there's potentially health needs. So it just all felt a bit messy, and I was thinking, like, what could I do? I just felt really moved to kind of do something. Like, it was so hard. It's one thing to signpost a family to a food bank and get them that kind of support, but actually, like, what can we do to kind of address things here? And I just had this kind of dream and, I guess, vision that then kind of came to me, this idea that what if we created a space that grows that food and donates it to food banks? Because, you know, there are so many shops and supermarkets and drop-off points for food banks, but because of the nature of the pickups and when things are delivered and dropped off, it's always, you know, your tin food and non-perishables. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if we can be donating this fresh fruit and veg directly to food banks or food action initiatives? And so the idea was born, and that was literally like about 4 or 5 years ago, and it's been in my mind ticking over for that long. And we almost kind of got up and running last year, and then a few things happened with land availability and you know, various things kind of got in the way, and it obviously just wasn't the right time. And then we found this amazing site at Heathfield Farm in Broadclyst, which Becky from So Much More put me in touch with Matt, who manages the site there. And it's just come together. What they're doing up there at Heathfield Farm really aligns with sort of personally what I believe in terms of outdoor provision for people. So Heathfield Farm is a facility that offers provision during the daytime for adults with learning disabilities and learning needs. And they do things like horticulture and woodwork and land care and land management, that's the phrase. And crafts and loads of stuff, and they kind of provide and make things for the community. And, you know, us having some of the land there and giving them a kind of regular monthly income helps support that. And it's a really beautiful site, and they're so kind to us. You know, they let us use their facilities, and we've got access to their kitchen and stuff. So it just felt like the right fit and the right time, and it's just gone from there, really.
It's really snowballed, and it's
It
been
has.
such a wonderful journey to watch on Instagram, because you guys make so much progress, and it's just a really inspirational project. And there's so many people across the UK who want to do something along a similar angle. Like, we've got our Little Gardeners Co CIC, which is a different scale and a different kind of key topic, but we're all doing something quite similar of getting that outdoor provision and helping families to, I guess, access something that should not be inaccessible but is so inaccessible: fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, fresh produce, and understanding where your crops come from.
Absolutely. And that's like one of the kind of key things for us. And I guess for the work I do within my job in education, so I do a lot of kind of alternative curriculum stuff in the school I'm working at. My role is Deputy Senko, so I've got some contact time with pupils, and I teach a life skills curriculum, and we kind of centre that around the AQA unit awards. And there are AQA unit awards for so many things. And I was like, oh, I wonder if there's one for allotments or for like growing your own veg. And there's loads. So we built a little allotment in school, and the kids and I have been on this like journey of creating space together and figuring out what we want where. And it provides, you know, like a multi-sensory kind of learning experience for them. But also they're learning about where their food comes from. And I remember when we sowed the carrots, and this is something like, oh, it blows my mind every time. I think I might have said this to you before, that a carrot comes from this like tiny seed. And when I was saying like, oh, these are carrot seeds, and the kids are like, wait, what? A carrot grows from that? And then seeing the carrots growing and like pulling the carrots, they're like mind blown. And it helps them to make those links then, and we're eating the fresh produce and they're taking it home with them. And I think, like you said, like giving people the opportunity to learn where food is coming from and how they can grow for themselves. So like one of our kind of ultimate visions for the project is not just to be providing this food for people, it's to equip them with the skills to be able to do that for themselves. So we want to be able to run workshops up there, free workshops, where we show people, you know, you can grow, even if you have a tiny courtyard or you've just, you know, maybe got a little balcony, you can grow in pots, you can grow vertically, you know, you can make the best use of your space, you can grow in an old compost bag, you know, a bucket. We want to show people that it's not as expensive and it's not as hard as you might think.
And I think that that's such an important thing to address. And after a year like this, growing is easy. Some years are more challenging than others.
Yeah.
But again, it's exactly what we're all about, is showing people that anything is possible in whatever space you've got, whether you can only grow microgreens on a windowsill or mushrooms on a windowsill, whether you've got a little balcony that you can explore. And it's all about not just the successes, but also when you fail at something or something doesn't grow, you learn so much from why that didn't work out. Whereas when something's a success, you just go, yeah, and then you move on, and you're not looking at how that was a success and why it worked out. You're just looking at great, positive tick, move on.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, you know, when things have failed, that's when I've been like, oh, okay, hang on, what do I need to do differently? Oh, I didn't know you had to feed your plants, that helps them, or I didn't know that I'm over watering actually, and you don't need to be watering your allotment every day, and things like that. And I think providing that opportunity for people to learn that, whether it's in, you know, the volunteer capacity for us of come up and have a go. You know, we've got a great group of volunteers. We've got about 30 people who are signed up, and we probably have each session between kind of 5 and 10, and a core group who regularly come. But within our bigger volunteer pool, we've got people who are experienced growers and people who've never gardened before in their life, and they want to come and learn a new skill and meet people. And it's kind of growing in a way I hadn't really thought about and envisioned. And I love that. I love that people are coming to learn a new skill. And I love that we're able to, like, you know, that's what we're kind of wanting to do, impart this knowledge and help people to become more self-sufficient.
And a big word that I've seen in lots of grant applications recently, which I actually do think is a good word, resilience, community resilience, and actually learning to, one, work as a community, but also learn key skills that are going to make you more resilient in the long term, whether that's financial, in your food situations, or just learning other social skills that you might not necessarily learn elsewhere. I don't know if you find the same, but we have a lot of people with ADHD or autism or very low self-confidence, and they kind of, it's a real big step forward for them to even come to a session, let alone participate and achieve something by the end of it. So it's really kind of ingraining core skills into the community that are quite difficult to access anywhere else.
Absolutely. And also, I think what's really important is ensuring that everybody feels part of the community, but also that your community knows how to welcome people from all walks of life. And, you know, we're hoping that we can work with the probation service who do some work up at Heathfield Farm in terms of kind of like maintenance or like helping with the bigger, more heavy duty jobs. And that's something that we're looking to do. And I think being outdoors and gardening, it just puts everyone on a level pegging in terms of, you know, we've got the tools we've got in our hands, let's make something from it. And I think, like you were saying, resilience, gardening teaches you so much patience and so much resilience. And it is a skill, I think, especially in terms of patience, that we kind of have grown out of as a society, because we live in this instantaneous world where if you don't know something, you can Google it in an instant, or, you know, like,
you want everything delivered next day.
Yeah, and actually, that's not how it used to be. And I was chatting with a friend of mine the other day about, like, oh, remember when we had to wait like the next week for the next episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And like you couldn't binge it. And it was that like excitement, and I think that's what's really nice about having our sessions. We have 2 sessions a week, one on a Wednesday evening and one on a Saturday morning. And there is that element, like particularly from a Saturday to a Wednesday when you've got a few, it's a longer break, that kind of build up of anticipation of like, oh, what are we going to find? What's next on the list? And I think I'm learning that actually there's so much joy in that slower pace and waiting for things to come, or building things yourselves, or doing things yourselves. And something that I've really loved lately is I'm consciously trying to move into a bit of a shift with friends and family where we kind of do skill swaps or favour swaps. So, it would be really easy to get somebody in to do a job for me and pay them money. But actually, is there someone I know who might be able to help me with that and teach me that skill? And then I can repay them in a way, like whether it's babysitting, or is it, doing a bit of gardening with them, or helping them plan their garden. And that's been a really lovely part of the journey with Devon Dig and Donate as well, because we've had volunteers who have come and offered their services, and it's just been wonderful. So Seth and Poppy, 2 of our volunteers, are really amazing filmmakers. They've made our little sort of promo video,
which is awesome.
It's so great. They're so talented, and what they're great at is really capturing like the ethos and the spirit of something. And I was just like over the moon with what they created. And also like they're so awesome. They're so willing to get stuck in. And they've moved down to Devon and they're setting up a small holding. So I've been over and helped them sort of coppice, and we're just swapping skills like that and swapping time. And I think that's such a nice way to like move forward in the world.
Absolutely. And something that actually I learned doing Hampton Court Palace was how much value people get out of helping you. I always thought I would always say no to people because it was a bit of an inconvenience. Like the amount of help that I was offered for Hampton Court, and I said no to it because I just didn't want to put anyone out. I didn't want anyone to have to go out of their way to do something to help me, to do something that I decided to do and that was my burden to bear. And actually, when I finally started accepting help, people were thrilled. They were so happy to be a part of something, and we find it the same now. They're getting to learn new skills and have new experiences that they never would have before. And so actually there's so much more value to be had than an exchange of, oh, you pay me £300 and I will deliver X, Y, and Z. Yeah. And I think that we live in that real transactional world of like no one would just do something for free. There's always an expectation, and actually it's quite like a long-term view as well with that Skillshare. We had someone come and lend us a chipper the other day, and we were like, great. Let us know what we can do to like help you out, like anything you need, like we're here for you.
He doesn't have to be instantaneous exchange.
He went, oh, you gave me a laptop a couple of years ago, like this is me repaying the favour. And we were like, oh god, didn't even, like you just forget about those things, don't you? And it was actually, he was like, I'm really glad that I've given you some help back later down the line. And it's actually quite meaningful to have that relationship with people where it's not oh, you owe me for this, or don't forget you owe me for that. It's just you're kind of,
like you say, longer term. Like, sorry, I'm really distracted because one of the cats just brought in a man about exchanging things. I think he wants the biscuits. I don't really want the mouse though.
No, maybe just a snack for him.
Yeah. Oh, say love you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I'd rather have, I don't know, some seeds.
go foraging for some seeds.
Yeah, bring me back a nice flower.
Imagine how sweet that would be if they walked with it.
Oh my gosh. I wonder if I could train them. Because Jasper, now we're on cat chat, but Jasper is a bit of an old favourite on Instagram. I trained him how to sit and high five.
Nice.
And I reckon he even did it for the vet last time he was in. He was like, can he have a treat? And I was like, yeah, but he has to high five for it. He was like, what? And I was like, just say sit and high five. And he did it. He was like, wow, that's amazing. Maybe I could train Jasper to fetch me flowers.
That would be a pretty cool skill.
Yeah.
Love that. Going back to the Skillshare, I'd love to know kind of, I guess, some of your stories about where you feel people have gained the most value from sessions, and that doesn't necessarily have to be in where they've learned a new skill or they've I guess the experiences. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought because you talked about cats.
I know, sorry, they're so distracting, aren't they?
They are.
I think one of the moments that really stands out for me, and actually it was captured in the video that Seth and Poppy made, is Jenny, one of our volunteers. She's so committed and she's there like as much as she possibly can be. And she's not got any gardening experience and she's just always so willing to get stuck in. Honestly, she's an absolute legend. Plus, she's a trained patisserie chef.
Oh,
it is an amazing cake. Like, it was so sweet as well because I obviously put like on the WhatsApp, like, we've got our funding from the lottery. And then the next session we had, she'd made a cake with Devon Dig and Donate on the top and to celebrate. It was so sweet. But there was this really gorgeous moment where we were sowing some wildflower seeds on the sort of inner circular beds that we've created. And she's like, these are the first seeds that I'm ever sowing. And she had so much like joy radiating from her. And I was just like, oh, that's what it's about. It's about bringing joy to people, giving them an opportunity to do something that maybe they never thought they would do or could do. And help, it's going to sound so cheesy, but helping people to grow.
We're all on a journey of growth.
Journey of growth, yeah. No, I love it. I just, that really like warmed my soul. It was so nice. And I think there's so many little moments where people are interacting with people they may never have met before. And, you know, we've got people who come as far as from Newton Abbot and Teignmouth Way. And Jess comes down from Bridgewater in Somerset. So that's a good like 45 minutes drive. And I feel really grateful for that. But I also feel like really sort of honoured that they're choosing to spend that time with us in that way. And I think that's what stands out as well, is like people are giving their time. Like you say, people really want to help causes like this or get involved. And just giving somebody or an organisation the gift of your time is so meaningful and makes such a difference. Because I literally, like, Devon Dig and Donate would not have happened without this group of volunteers. They've worked their butts off. You know, we started late in the season. We didn't get onto the land till the end of April. And we made as many beds as we physically could, as quickly as we could, and got stuff in the ground. So we were kind of behind the growing season a little bit. And, you know, that we're reliant on the rain. We water as much as we can, but most of us are doing this alongside a full-time job. And so we're reliant on the elements. And like you were saying earlier, like, it has been a tough year. Spring was so much cooler than usual. Things are like, a lot of people are experiencing things being like late getting started, and harvests are much later this year. And we've had like at points loads of rain, which has like washed things away or caused seeds and things to rot, or seedlings. And then we've had these crazy hot spells where we've had no rain. It's like, for anyone who's starting growing this year, especially on a bigger scale like we are, it is tough.
Yeah, I have been saying all year we chose the worst year to start a new gardening project.
I feel a bit the same because I'm like, oh my God. And it takes us a good like hour and a half to water the site properly. Like, we have a hose pipe that comes from, I think it's from a borehole on the site, or we fill up the watering cans. It's not it's not for the faint-hearted.
Yeah, but it's really good physical exercise. I really think that, and if anyone who works for any grant funders that work in sport, I really think that gardening should be classed as a sport, because if you have never pushed a wheelbarrow 100 metres up and down a field 100 times, you have no idea. It's basically CrossFit. It's like CrossFit in the garden. Like, even just lugging the watering cans around, trugs full of vegetables and peelings and whatnot, moving compost.
We're always doing squats, aren't we? Like, my thighs are solid. Like, since doing my allotment and the project, and especially with like planting so much, and we've been like crouching down and stuff. Honestly, it's like it's mad. Jess and I did last Monday. So Jess, as part of the company she works for, and quite this is another thing that like I didn't know until I sort of started the journey. So like there are so many things I wish I'd known before that I've learned along the way, which I'm like trying to share that with people so they know as well. That one of the things I didn't know until a couple of the volunteers mentioned it is a lot of companies do kind of like fund volunteer days for their staff and for their workforce. So they'll have a paid work day where they go and volunteer for a local organisation or company.
We've got one coming to us on Monday.
Oh, cool. Who's that through?
The travel chapter where I used to work.
Oh, wicked.
That we always had a charity day there, and every single member of staff gets a day of paid volunteer. So we're like, come and volunteer with us.
Yeah. So Zoo's Waste have been amazing at giving us like some cardboard and wood chip, and they have the same thing. You have to make sure you have your public liability insurance and stuff in place. But so Jess had a volunteer day, and she came down. We did 7 hours last Monday. And like it was great. We got loads done. We had a really great chat the next day. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't move. And it's like I'm like actively trying to turn like gardening into like a career. Like I'd love to go into alternative provision and outdoor education at some point. And then part of me, like after a 7-hour day, I'm like, can I actually do that 5 days a week? Or will I just collapse?
I think you'll just be super fit, like your body will adapt and you'll be like in the fittest condition of your life.
Yeah. Okay. That's encouraging.
That's what we're aiming for. I just can't get over how physical it is, and how, for me, as someone who was never really into sport until the last couple of years because I'm a roller hockey player now, team sports were never for me, whereas gardening is such a great way to keep fit. You really get your steps in, you meet lots of lovely people. And for me, the biggest thing is I'm currently training to run a 10k, and I hate running, and every thought is I hate running. When you're gardening, you don't think I hate doing exercise, I hate lifting weights. You just think, oh, lovely gardening. Oh, why is that slug eating my cabbage? That you tend to have that just kind of like more positive outlook. You're not going, I am going to my allotment for an hour to do an hour of exercise. You end up there for 4 or 5 hours, and you're like burnt thousands of calories because I've done loads of jobs. I've been really productive. I think it's wonderful.
And often I go to my allotment, because I need to get things done, but also a lot of the time I go there, especially after work, so I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to decompress. So it's like the physical benefits and for me, the mental health benefits. And that's something as well that I'm really passionate about, getting people to realise and getting people to see. And I think I can see it with the kids that I've been working with. They're like, are we going outside today? We're going outside today. And they love that. And also, like, in a way, you're like, haha, you don't know you're doing exercise right now. Having fresh air. Like, I'm working with kids who often, like to spend a lot of time gaming and don't see the light of day. And it's a great way for them to connect with the world, and especially these generations like coming up through school at the moment, who are, I think, are so social media, so technology focused and orientated. Not everyone, obviously, that's kind of generalizing in a way, but from my experience of teaching in the last 10-15 years, it's definitely, there's, with quite a lot of young people, there's less kind of, it's lower down on their agenda of what you're doing this weekend. It's like, oh, I'm going to be outside. It's like, oh, I've got this game to play, or I'm going to be catching up on this Netflix, or
very device heavy.
Whereas my parents would literally chuck us out of the house and be like, teasing 3 hours, better find something to entertain yourselves.
I think it's brilliant. I wanted to explore a bit more the alternative provision that you talked about. So whether you want to talk about kind of where you see Devon Dig and Donate going, or what you think that the school system needs.
Oh, that's a big question, isn't it?
Question.
Yeah, I think we know as a kind of society that the current education system isn't the right fit for every child, and I work in, with a focus on children with additional needs, and I worked in a special school for nearly 9 years, and a primary school before that. And I think for me, obviously, I'm working with children who have a lot of needs that mean they really struggle to cope with a mainstream classroom and with the mainstream curriculum. And I am seeing more and more how outdoor learning and alternative provision is a better fit for a lot of children that I work with, and that practical learning and stimulation is something that means it's sort of really feeling engaged and feeling like they found, like their kind of learning style. And that doesn't mean that mainstream education as we know it is completely wrong and needs to be scrapped. It works for a lot of kids, but I think we're in an age where we're seeing a lot more diagnoses, we're seeing a lot more children with education healthcare plans, we're seeing a lot more children coming through school with additional needs that mean they struggle. And there's so many people doing so much work to try and support children, and we know that education's been systematically underfunded under the Tory government, and so it's in a position where there just isn't the funding to be able to provide this kind of environment for kids. And I think there are so many amazing alternative provisions out there, and for anyone who doesn't know what that means, that's a different, it's not necessarily a different school placement, but it's maybe an activity or a different setting that a child might access for an afternoon a week, or it might be 1 or 2 days a week. Sometimes that's kind of outdoor survival skills learning, sometimes it's cooking, sometimes it's with animals. We've had some pupils accessing an amazing provision at Sidmouth Donkey Sanctuary. They have a donkey therapy program and a donkey management program that's free, which is amazing. And the kids have loved it and loved being the animals. But for me, I've really seen the benefit in particularly the last 5 years, of kind of incorporating my passion for growing and what I'm doing in schools. I see how it positively impacts young people, and it's also equipping young people with skills that mean they're ready for employment. And I think, I guess a question is, are exams fit for everybody, and that kind of thing. And so I would love at some point down the line to be able to provide a space for young people. That means they can learn these practical skills, they can learn skills that mean they're employable, they get to be in a context where they feel they're succeeding and they can see their achievements. And it's not just all based on kind of academic learning. There's such a value in practical learning. And I think, like we've talked about, the physical benefits, but the mental health benefits, for young people's social and emotional development, and having that disconnect in technology and saying, like, yeah, we're going to document this, we might make a video, we might film some content, but actually we are now doing this activity for a couple of hours, we're going to leave our phones in the shed, or just having that time reconnecting with nature and connecting with other people, I think is so important. So yeah, the dream in the long run would be to be able to provide an outdoor provision for young people, or like home education groups or things like that.
And I think
that's the next dream.
I think that there's lots more people turning to home education. Definitely something we're seeing where we're both in Devon, I'm just in North Devon, but definitely something we've seen a lot of. And I think it's really interesting when you kind of look back historically, kids who were not behaving in school, weren't getting on in school, were just kind of pushed to the side and excluded, or just kind of, I think you had a lot of people, this is maybe going back a couple of decades rather than just one, but that were told by their teachers that they'd never make anything from themselves, and so they should just give up now.
My brother was told that by his tutor. You're never going to amount to anything.
Yeah.
And it really affected my brother's confidence. And his tutor was a PE teacher, and my brother wasn't sporty. And so he didn't really value my brother and his input. And my brother did learn in a different way, and school wasn't totally the right fit for him. And he really would have thrived in, a more practical environment. But he's done amazingly. He went on to college, he got a degree, he started his own business designing and making clothing that, they were shipping to Europe and New York. And now him and his fiance own a restaurant in Southend, an amazing falafel restaurant called Sababa. So if you're in Southend, you should definitely go and check it out. I know I'm biased, but the food is amazing and the cocktails are amazing. Ella's got a real great taste for cocktails. But he's so successful, and I had this really satisfying moment where I came across that teacher that he had, his tutor, later in life, and he actually said the words, "What's your brother doing? Stacking shelves?" And I said, "Oh no, he owns his own company. He's a director of a company." And his face dropped, and I was like, in your face. And I think, it made me really mad, but also it was like, no, he found something that he was good at. He found something creative and practical. And I think we just have to provide avenues for young people to explore and learn what they're good at, and what engages them and what drives their passions.
100%.
And sometimes that's not always available in the national curriculum.
And I think that the national curriculum doesn't necessarily open your eyes to what prospects are out there if you're not necessarily academic. Because I ended up in marketing. I never knew that marketing was a thing until I was at uni, and they were like, "Oh, here's a marketing module," and I was like, "What?" And I ended up doing that for years and years. But horticulture in general was thought of as a job for people with no other skills, where they'd go and be a hard labourer, and they would go and do it because it was the only thing that they could possibly get a job in when they'd failed all their GCSEs, which I just think is insane. And I think that we're definitely moving away from that now, which is amazing.
Yeah, it's a positive step, I think. And I think, that shows from the availability of more practical courses and things at A level and beyond. And I think there's a lot of campaigning, isn't there, for gardening to be on the school curriculum. And I think it's a no-brainer, really. And there are so many schools that are doing amazing things, like primary schools, secondary schools, special schools, nurseries, who are doing gardening clubs and, providing that space. And we've got a gardening club at school, and our member of staff, Becky, who runs it every single day. And there's a great group of kids that go down, and I'm trying to build the allotment side of it and growing food into our kind of alternative curriculum, I guess, if you want to phrase it like that. But it would be amazing to see gardening and on the national curriculum. And there are often topics within learning subjects where there's a field to fork or farm to fork kind of module. But I think that repetitive drip feed learning of not just this is where your food comes from, but this is how you can do it yourself. And this is how you can learn to support yourself and your family and grow your own food. And that helps take pressure off the infrastructure. Or even if it's like you haven't got the space to do that, but you're going to support British farming and British growers, that's so important to know about.
And I think also the hands-on learning is another really good contrast between I really learned that I'm a practical learner when I did my RHS level 2, because the fruit and veg module I found the most difficult, despite the fact I've been growing fruit and veg for 4 or 5 years. And it's like, you must remember the exact spacing of beans, you must remember how to do, and I was like, but as a gardener, I don't get a tape measure out and go, 20 centimetres, yep, oh no, that's 21 centimetres, can't go there. And I really struggled with the academic having to read information off a piece of paper, and because I couldn't work out how it applied to the actual real world, which I think is part of the problem with a lot of when you're learning from a book or from, whereas when you're practical, you're getting out there, you're getting stuck in, and you're asking questions that you wouldn't have asked if you'd read it on a piece of paper, because you're not thinking about it in the same way.
Yeah, and making connections to the world around us is such an important part of learning, and making those connections to our own lives. So how does this fit in with my life? Why do I need to learn this skill? What's, like, what's the point? And I think, like you said, there's the recommended spacings and things like that. But what you learn when you're doing things for yourself is, well, I haven't got that much space, but I do want to grow that many bean plants. How can I, maybe I'll just squish them in a little bit, or I'll interplant with things. And like you say, things come up that if you're reading from a book and following guidelines to the letter, you might not learn as much. You might not learn, oh, that's a good companion plant, or actually putting my beans 10 centimeters apart is not good. And it's trial and error, isn't it? It's all exploratory learning. And I think, like, one of the things you're doing, that's one of the things you're doing and providing at your place, is that opportunity to explore and get messy and have fun. And that's what learning should be about, having fun and really engaging with what you're doing.
Absolutely. And I think it's a really good, this is a bit deeper than I usually go, but it's like a metaphor for life of, like, you could follow gardening instructions to the T. You could follow exactly what the seed packet says, and nature will do nature's thing, and it may or may not grow. One year you could follow the instructions to a T and it will grow fantastic and it'll be the best sunflower you've ever seen. The next year you might follow it to a T and it'll be the worst sunflower you've ever seen.
Yeah.
And that is how life is. Like, if you're taught that you follow the rules and life will go well for you, that is not a very realistic representation.
No, and it comes back to that thing of resilience, doesn't it? It's teaching us, things are going to go wrong in life, and you are going to have to wait for stuff, and you're going to have to problem solve and maybe think outside the box, or just use what you've got to hand. How many times do we go, oh, it'd be great to have I don't know, a brassica cage built out of metal piles, the best netting ever. And what do we always do? Some blue pipe, bit of string, some net. What have you got to hand? And I don't think it's necessarily, it is, like you said, a bit of a metaphor for life, but also it's really important because it does teach you that things unexpected come along, and it doesn't always work the same way. And you might have a routine, you might have a route, that sometimes something gets in the way or something doesn't work quite right. And if you can learn those skills to just step back and go, okay, that hasn't worked this time, how can we move forward? Then that's a skill you can apply in so many different contexts in life, not just in gardening.
Yeah, creative problem solving. This is actually one of the things in business that I've talked about a lot recently, and with people who are having problems with their teams at work. What one of the key skills I think that all people should learn is to be a problem solver. When you go to someone, you shouldn't go to someone and go, this is a problem. You should go, this is a problem. I've thought about the potential of what we could do. Here are the possible solutions. This is the one I think is the best. And I think that's how people progress in their careers a lot, is when they're the people that are going, rather than just going, oh, well, so-and-so's not done this, and so I haven't done that. And I've really applied that in work in the last maybe year or so. And I've seen some really good results from it, where you're just being slightly more proactive. And in the garden, that's exactly what you learn, is you've got a problem, you're going to have to solve it. You likely have little to no resources, whether that's because you're at the plot and you need a fix now, or because we don't want to spend every single penny of our income on making an allotment be the most beautiful thing on the planet. So you look around and you go, oh, I need to make a support structure. Oh, there's some dried bits of sunflower stalk over there. They seem quite hardy. They're going to do for a little while until I can put something else in. And I think it's quite fun for me. That's like where I really get stuck into gardening, and is when we put the pea tunnel up in our garden. It was that the garden needs height. It looks really flat right now, and it needs something to kind of climb up so that we can make it a bit more diverse and a bit more sensory. What can we put in? And I was like, oh, I've got some canes at the allotment, I'll bring those, we'll grow peas up it. And it was the best feature that the most people have talked about, and every single week people go, wow, look at the peas. And now the peas gone, and it's very sad. But it's
sad when they go
problem
over.
Solution.
Exactly. And I think, like, the school I work in now has very much got that ethos of possible solutions and problem solving, and it does really help you develop. And you know, it's such a priceless skill to have. And I just love that you have to be so resourceful when you're gardening. And like you said, like before we got our lottery grant, we were at the point where I was like, I can't really afford to put any more of my own money into this project, and we've got no way of like getting nets. We've got crops to go in the ground, but we haven't got enough netting, and how can we get resourceful? We were like literally like where the hedge had been cut back, we were pulling out all the sticks that had been cut off, and like that's what we did when we started at the site. And we were marking out, I had some baler twine that I'd been given, and we were marking out where our beds were going to go and like planning the structure of the site. We didn't have any pegs, anything to go in the ground. So we just spent the first half an hour like snapping bits of stick, and we used sticks. And then when we had the netting, but we didn't have pegs, we were pegging it down with sticks. And like we've used what's been around until we've been able to get like funding, or we've been really kindly donated some things. Like First Tunnels donated us a polytunnel, which was amazing, and that's meant we can get like the tomatoes and things in. And Harkness Roses really kindly donated us some roses that we're just planning where we're going to put those, and Power Sheds really kindly gave us a discount on the shed. So like people are so kind and so generous, and I think it's really important to just like approach people. There are loads of initiatives, and a lot of businesses have like a kind of community fund element or a community outreach element, and will often be willing to help out. And that's like one of my top tips. It was like when you were saying earlier with Hampton Court, like sometimes it can feel scary to ask for help or to reach out to people and be like, oh, we're like really struggling for money, would you mind donating this? But if you don't ask, you don't get. And 9 times out of 10, people, they might not be able to help you with exactly what you wanted, but they'll either point you in the direction of someone who can, or they'll do what they can. Piper's Farm, Abby Allen, the director at Piper's Farm, got in touch with us and was basically like, well, we have a never-ending supply of cow manure, so just come and get some when you want it. And it's things like that that are so helpful.
Absolutely. And my thing that I always come back to is the worst that someone's going to do is say no. Like over the past 5 years, the biggest thing I've learned is the power of an email. And sending one email that like gives me such fear still to send emails when you're asking people for things. They come back and they say, oh, really sorry, it's not a good time for us. You've lost nothing. You've got the answer, rather than thinking like, oh, but what if I had emailed them and they had have said yes. And people like you say, people want to be supportive and they want to help out where they can. And
yeah, absolutely.
It's I just think it's brilliant. It's brilliant to bring everyone together and they feel like they're a part of it. But also going back to you kind of bodge things together initially, and then when you do manage to upgrade, it's so much more meaningful because you've worked with something not necessarily substandard, but let's call it substandard because I can't think of a better word.
You've worked with little to none.
Yeah, and then you get to move to the next level and the next level and the next level, and you're kind of just upgrading. And it's like when you work in a job and you're kind of after the next pay rise, like how can I better myself to earn a bit more money so that I can do a bit more with my life? You're kind of doing the same with your garden. And you go,
I think
what I really, really want is some raised beds or some cabbage. You can't buy everything at once, but you can slowly upgrade and slowly upcycle to make it what you want it to be.
Yeah. One of the things, like, my dad is always saying to me, you can't do everything at once, because I am one of those people who has a vision. I'm like, right, snap my fingers, I want it to look exactly like it does in my head right now. The thing that I've loved most, or one of the things I've loved the most about Devon Dig and Donate, is I had this vision, like it's kind of come into fruition in that we've started the group, we've started the garden, and I've kind of had an idea of what the layout might be, but one of the principles for us as a group is that it's a cooperative and collaborative group. It's not me making decisions about everything and telling everyone what I want them to do. It's, I'm kind of steering things a little bit, but actually I want people to be involved in the decision making and to bring ideas to the table. And any like big decisions we have to make, it's not just the directors who are making those, it's the group, the whole team. And when, you do want to get everything done at once, but the volunteers have worked so hard, and I keep going up to the plot and thinking, oh, the grass got a bit overgrown, and oh, it's looking a bit like dishevelled. And then people will come up, or volunteers will come up who haven't been for maybe a few weeks or a couple of months, and go, oh my gosh, it looks amazing! Wow, I can't believe you've done this. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like, and there's so much more we want to do, and we want to involve local schools in creating some artwork for the site, and we want to get make it fully wheelchair accessible. So we're thinking about what do we need to do to the ground. We can't kind of lay concrete paths or anything like that, but what could we do to make that more accessible, and what features do we want to have, and when this was still a pipe dream for me, obviously I was like, oh, well, I'd like that there, and I think that would be good there. But now other people are coming going, well, why don't we put a herb spiral there? And what about if we have like a living willow art, like arch TP as like as a quiet sensory space. And so the site's now becoming this collaborative piece, and I love it. That collaborative creativity is really cool.
I think as well, you really get the most out of people when they feel like they can put their pennies worth in, and they feel
Absolutely.
like it's valued and listened to. And I think as well, what you get is, I know what I think and I've got my kind of vision for everything, but actually when you share it with other people that don't think in the same way as you, they're not criticizing, but they come back and they go, well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Can we look at it like this? And I'm like mind blown, because I would have never thought about it in that way, but it makes so much more sense. And I think it's important to be able to, again, something I'm working on, not take it as criticism and be like, your idea was bad. It's just, you thought about it in one way and yours works in all of these pro ways. There's there's another way that we can work this that actually makes more sense practically. So it's kind of like really that hive mind, getting everyone together to work out the issues ahead of time, and then you're kind of decreasing the risk, and then you come together at the end and you're like, we made this as a collective. It wasn't people go, oh, you've done such a good job, and I'm like, well, I haven't personally done it. Like, I had a team of people that helped me build the beds. The under 5 group have sown all the seeds. These people have done this. These people, like, you can't put the onus on any one person, because you needed everybody to be a part of it for that to come to fruition.
It's creating a community, isn't it? One of the things we're sort of, I guess it's becoming a bit of a tagline maybe, but we're saying about the project and the site is it's created by the community for the community. And I love that. And I think what you were saying about like other people discussing ideas with you, it's part of the processing and part of the thinking it through and part of the problem solving. And I'm very much a bit of a perfectionist and like things to look a bit neat and tidy. And at the moment, like where we've done no dig beds and we've had like an overlap of the cardboard onto the grass and the soils, the beds are in the middle. I'm like, oh, it looks a bit messy around the edges, and everyone's like, oh, that's fine. Like we'll just make it, because we're not doing raised beds. We'll either put logs around, or we'd love to like weave some little willow like bed really borders and things. But it takes time, doesn't it? We can't do everything at once. It evolves at the pace it does, and I think for me as well, I'm like, because I'm quite independent, actually quite organised for my job and stuff, I sometimes find it hard to like relinquish control of things a little bit. But this is teaching me that. So I'm still,
we're on our own growth process
I'm growing through it, and I'm developing, and I'm learning things about myself, and learning, oh, I can be like, okay, we'll just let that be. That will be what it will be. And it will, a part of me was maybe a bit despondent that we couldn't get as many crops in the ground at the right time, and our harvests are going to be, what they are this year. And then one of the volunteers was like, well, it's the first year, we're just getting ready.
Yeah, compare it to last year when you had nothing.
We had nothing, yeah. And, we're getting this site ready, and we'll have the soil, we'll spend time working on improving the soil over the winter, and we'll get all the structural stuff done in the winter. And we can only go at the pace we can go. And it's amazing that we have so many volunteers. And, we're always welcoming new volunteers. We had a new volunteer join us last week, and we love to welcome people. And obviously, the more people you have coming, the more things you can get done. But you just grow at the pace you're going at.
Yeah, I think that's the tagline: grow at the pace you're going at.
Yeah, there we go. Let's get a t-shirt.
Let's get a t-shirt. Mine says create abundance.
I've got that t-shirt.
Big
Oh,
fan.
Rachel at Feverfew, she's such a legend. She sent us 10 pairs of her awesome gloves. Have you ever found a better pair of gloves for gardening? Because I
and
haven't.
she is the podcast sponsor, so not biased whatsoever.
Oh, is she?
Yeah. But the best gloves, I've got 3 pairs now. I just bought the Chloe Plumstead special edition because I've got 3 places where I wear gloves. So I was like, well, I need one for each of them.
Yeah, fair, because I've either always left mine at Devon Dig and Donate or always left them at the allotment.
Yeah.
But no, the volunteers were stoked. I was like, oh, we've been gifted these gloves. And they were like, wow, they're awesome.
They're
Plus,
a treat for our...
For those of us who Instagram some of our growing stuff, you can still, I feel like we're fully like...
Discount code Lady Gardener 15 for 15% off.
There you go.
It would have been in the intro, but in case you missed it.
She's so sweet. She sent me the sweetest card when she sent me a pair of gloves to try. And like you're saying, I was an inspiration, and she was really looking forward to seeing how the project grows. And again, it goes back to, you know, like people donate what they can, and for her to give us 10 pairs of gloves, that's so generous. Thanks, Rachel.
We love you, Rachel.
We do.
We actually we just had calls where we just chat to each other about what we were doing with our little businesses, and it was just like a really nice way to like have a bit of decompression and be like, oh, this is really stressing me out. And she actually recommended you for the podcast, and I was like, have had Rhiannon on before and definitely will have her again. So I feel like this is a really nice kind of like coming together. But the gloves are just amazing.
They are. That's so nice that you have those chats, because I think, like we were talking before, weren't we? It's quite overwhelming. It's been quite the emotional roller coaster for me, because I'm like, oh my God, my dream's happening, woohoo! And then I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many things I didn't think about. And
that you don't know.
VAT.
You don't know what you don't know until you realise that you don't know it.
Yeah. I went to, a couple of weekends ago, I went to a Land Workers Alliance Women and Diverse Genders weekend up at Fresh and Green. Ruth from Fresh and Green hosted. It was a free event. There was probably like, people kind of came and went during the weekend, but on the Saturday there were probably about 30 people. And people like shared skills in terms of, Becca did like an angle grinding beginners workshop. That was fun. But one of the ladies did a introduction to bookkeeping. And I was like, I was writing so many notes, and I was like, oh, I need to do that. Oh, I haven't done that.
Have you had to do accounts?
No, I had to do that.
Have you got to your 1 year of being? Are you a CIC?
We're a CIC, yeah. We haven't got to our 1 year yet.
Oh my goodness!
I know that.
I was so stressed.
I'm really lucky because I have a very nice friend who's an accountant who said, cook me a steak and I'll help you with your...
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, that's another thing. If you can like skill swap,
well, accountants are very expensive.
Cook someone dinner.
As I have learnt this year.
Yeah. But it was so helpful.
Just so much that you don't know.
And I think it's really important to have like opportunities to talk to people who are running similar groups, but also like kind of early on in the journey of doing that, because there are so many amazing people to learn from who've been doing it for a really long time, but when you're starting up, it's so overwhelming.
Yeah, I was going to say the biggest thing that's been our saving grace has been like networking meetings, those calls with other people doing similar things. We go to so many networking meetings in North Devon. They achieve so much for us. They really pull through on projects. We meet so many amazing people, but it's that sitting down with other people, whether they're running in like parallel kind of streams. We get a lot of people that come to the networking meetings, which might be people who have clients who would be suitable to come and like volunteer at our projects and things like that.
Oh, cool.
And other groups. And we actually run one called the Green and Blue Network. If anyone's in North Devon, Green and Blue Network, hit me up.
Oh, nice. I need to find some in the Exeter area. Yeah. I'm sure there are. But
I don't know if you've got an organisation. We've got North Devon Voluntary Services.
Yeah, I'm sure there's.
And they set it all up. There's like the One Northern Devon partnership, and they have lots of networking meetings for like young people, and families, and it's just awesome. We've met so many amazing
we need to
people.
tap into that for sure.
10 out of 10 would recommend. Also, like the community business courses. Loved the SSE. I'm on the community business trade up program. Met lots of really cool people across the southwest. £5,000 grant funding. Really great program for the last 12 months. So really do recommend if anyone is a community business. I did the Founders for the Future one, which was 3 months before.
Yeah, you did that. There was an age cap on that, wasn't there, though?
There was originally on Founders for the Future, and they took it off in the end, I think. I don't know. They've got 2 at the moment, because the community business trade up will end in October, and they've got another one that's just launched, but I don't know what the age cap is. But I think that they're slightly more flexible on it than it maybe looks like.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Because some of us are older than others.
You're not a day over 21.
Thanks.
We're both 21 in my eyes.
21 in my own eyes.
Right. We must wrap up because I know we've got very busy lives. But closing thought, if anyone wanted to do something similar to what you were doing, what would your number one bit of advice be?
Find somebody near you who's doing something similar already and ask if you can chat to them. So near me, there's an initiative called Wivy Grows in Wiveliscombe in Somerset, and I got in touch with Rosie there. And this was going back probably a couple of years ago. I chatted with her and she was so sweet. I went to meet her in her mum's kitchen, and we just sat, and she just gave me so many tips. She taught me through so much, and she was so kind, sharing all her knowledge. And then she kind of shared some of their sort of safeguarding policy templates, and she was talking about vision documents. I was like, what's that? And she sort of shared that with me. So I would say, yeah, find someone who's doing something similar and just say, can I chat with you? Can you talk me through the startup process? And if anyone around the area or anywhere in the country would like to chat to us about that, then I'm really willing to do that, because I think, like you said, there's so much that you don't think about before you do it.
And 10 out of 10 would recommend a chat with Rhiannon, because I love it when we get the chance to chat.
And with Shannon. Shannon's been doing loads of amazing stuff. But yeah, I think, and like you said, creating a network of people,
you never know what conversation is going to be the thing that pushes you forward. I actually met a head teacher the other day who hooked me up with another project in marketing, which could potentially change my life. And we just so happened to walk past each other in the corridor of a primary school where I was meeting another staff member.
Yeah, you never know. You never know what's going to come of something. And it could just be a 5-minute chat, or, people have come up to me. I did a talk at Crops Not Shops Festival about setting up a community space like that. And somebody came up and they were like, I'm not near you. I can't come and volunteer, but I'd like to donate you some money. And that was really kind. So, I think take all the opportunities you can and just say yes to stuff.
Definitely say yes. And then you have to find a point where you have to start saying no, which is at the point I'm at.
That is true. That is another podcast episode. But this is a question that I'm getting asked a lot in interviews, and it was a question that a couple of people had at the talk I did. It's how are you avoiding burnout? Because I have a very full-on full-time job, I have my own allotment, I have life, have a relationship, and I have the project. And I honestly, that probably could be a whole other podcast with a couple of other people, a group chat maybe.
We should definitely do that.
But you do have to learn to pace it and say no and learn what you can manage. And that's where asking for help comes in, isn't it?
Yeah. My outlets are, I play roller hockey, and I try to stay pretty dedicated to doing that every Tuesday night and not letting work take over. And I put the music on as loud as I possibly can in the van, and I sing at the top of my lungs.
Yes.
And it's the biggest decompression tool.
It's so good for you, whether you feel like you can sing or not. And music can change your mood in an instant. And funnily for me, because sometimes the growing project can feel overwhelming, but my allotment is my happy time and my sacred time.
Mine isn't anymore.
Oh, but
I'm overwhelmed with the allotment more than anything else.
Well, I'll come and give you a hand.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
We'll have
Right.
a Lockwood Day and picnic.
Because we've got busy lives and I don't want to be the reason for your burnout today. Final points. When and where can people come and get involved, volunteer? How can they get involved in the project? Where can they find you on social media? Give us all the deets.
All the deets. So our growing sessions run on a Wednesday evening, 6 p.m. till 8 p.m. and Saturdays, 10 a.m. till 12 p.m. at the moment during the summer months, because it's too hot to work past 12. And that's at Heathfield Farm on Station Road in Broadclyst in Devon. And we have a website, devondigganddonate.co.uk, and we are on socials as well, on Instagram as Devon_dig_and_donate. It's so hard when you say it. There's a link on the website. And we're hoping as well also to be able to set up a donate page. We're just having a few technical issues with that. But if anyone is willing and able to donate seeds, tools, anything like that, then they can just get in touch via the website. There's a contact page. And we welcome all ages, all abilities. Kids are really welcome at our growing sessions, but they just have to be supervised at all times by a caregiver. And it's good fun. And quite often on a Saturday there's cake, because we have quite a few bakers.
That's how we con people into coming into our sessions. Oh, my mum's baked cake for this one. Thank you so much, Rhiannon.
Oh, it's been so nice chatting.